This is Bill Ayers on New York's 95.5 PLJ. We're back with our Community Connection show. And our guest tonight is Ann Toback. She's the executive director of the Workmen's Circle. That's an organization that I've never heard of before, but it's most interesting. I've been reading about it. Their website is circle.org. Circle.org. Their phone number, 212-889-6800. 212-889-6800. Welcome, Ann.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you on, and I know that you've been there for 8 years, but the organization's been there for a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
You guys go way back, right?
Yes, I'm just a small minute in the Workmen's Circle's life, in a way.
Right.
We go back to 1900, maybe even a little bit before, but we certainly were founded in 1900 by Eastern European Jewish workers. And if you know the history of the United States, around 1900 there was a huge immigration from Eastern Europe to New York, among other places. Thousands and thousands of Eastern European Jews came over, and they had a lot of needs. I mean, it's not unlike what we're seeing today as immigrants come to the United States. I mean, they needed to learn about our culture. They needed jobs. They needed a place to stay, clothing. They needed it all. And the people who founded the Workmen's Circle did so as a support mechanism for their fellow immigrants. They knew that together they were stronger than individually.
So now you have a number of dimensions to your organization. I know that one of the dimensions is teaching Yiddish, but another very basic one has to do with social justice. Let's talk a little bit about that one first. What are some of the things that you guys are doing?
Sure, that's near and dear to my heart. Well, I'd like, if I can ask, to sort of take you back to the beginning, too, because it connects to what we're doing today. When we were founded, I said they were workers. I would have been perhaps more accurate to say they were activists. They were many of the people who founded the Workmen's Circle were also union organizers. They had been union organizers in their home countries, and they came here and brought those ideals with them. The idea that when you're on the job, you have rights. You have the right to a safe workplace. You have a right to fair pay. You have a right to time off. All of these concepts were pretty new in the American work world at that time, and they came over and they took their organizing skills, along with them, and they put them to good use. So early in the day, the Workmen's Circle wasn't just an organization to support immigrants integrating into the United States, but it was an organization that supported activism. And so from our founding to today, activism has been a core part of our identity and what we do. We were considered a partner, and some say a backbone, to the growing American labor movement in the 1900s. Today, we again are standing up and strong for American workers, and this past few years we've been committed to the Fight for 15 movement, where we've been advocating for a fair living wage for all American workers.
Now, that sounds like it's moving forward, at least in New York State.
Yes.
Because the governor is in favor of it, the mayor is in favor of it.
Well, it passed, and the legislation passed in New York State, so we're all on schedule for a $15 minimum wage here. But, of course, across the country, it hasn't yet taken effect in all states, and you still have millions of Americans today who are working full time and aren't taking home enough pay to meet their daily needs and to meet the needs of their families. So the $15 minimum wage is still very much alive and important to all of us.
And it exists in Seattle, it exists in San Francisco, it exists in, I think, Santa Fe, a bunch of other places. But there are still places in the country, especially in the South, where there is no state minimum wage. They just go with the $7.25 for the
and nowhere is that acceptable. I mean, sometimes people will say, "Oh, but you're in New York. You're in, that's one place." But when you're in and fill in the blank in Georgia, it's not the same. Well, no, it's not the same. But people still have basic needs, and you can't live on $7.56 an hour, or $8 or $9 if you have a family. So people are working 40, 50, 60 hours a week just, to put food on the table and keep the electricity on in their homes. And that's just not right. That's not the value that we feel our country was founded on. So we're out there saying it's unacceptable to us that people have to work multiple jobs just to get the basics of life into their homes, and we're fighting for a floor, we call it, of $15 an hour, fair pay for fair work.
And I know, I may have actually been on a picket line with you recently and didn't know it.
Oh.
Because I know that you've been helping the Imkalee farm workers.
That's one of the groups that are one in particular. We absolutely support that cause, and one of our schools is very much involved in fighting for the Imkalee farm workers' rights, and they've been picketing a Wendys for many years. One of the things we do at the Workmens Circle is engage communities around these values, and we teach Jewish cultural identity to children and their families. But we have 8 supplementary schools, so they very often take place on Sundays all around the country, mostly they're in New York, New Jersey, Massachusetts. We have a new one in Illinois, and one of our schools is here in Midtown, and the kids have really embraced the Imkalee workers, among other causes. I mean, these kids are activists at the highest level, and they routinely will go to Wendys and inform people that Wendys has yet to sign an agreement providing for fair wages for the Imkalee workers.
And they're the only ones that are left amongst the fast food people, because McDonald's and Burger King and all the others have agreed to it.
It's amazing. Yeah. I mean, it's an amazing campaign because you have some real success there, and then you have one holdout, and that's Wendys. And we can only hope that whoever is making the decisions at Wendys will look and see the damage they're doing to their own reputation, but to a group of of workers who are providing a product that we all need and want.
Well, there was just a demonstration actually this weekend, right?
Yes, I've heard about it, but I confess I wasn't at it. It's very likely our kids were there.
Now, you mentioned kids, and you have 8 schools. What do you mean by a school? Is it replacing high school? Or
No. These are, we say, supplementary schools. So these are schools that meet typically one day a week, for a few hours, and the kids learn about their Jewish identity, but in a way that really reflects who we are. So it's a culturally focused program. They have a lot of really authentic Jewish experiences. There's a lot of holiday celebrations. They learn about the literature and the history of the Jewish people. And then alongside it, they learn the Jewish tradition of social and economic justice and activism. And there is a strong Jewish tradition in
very much
activism.
So. Yeah.
And we teach it. We have a social justice curriculum that, when I call it a curriculum, it sounds kind of flat, but it's not. It's about teaching kids and their families and adults around us how to look at activism as an ongoing challenge. So it's not just about saying, I want to, change the world, or I want to help somebody. It's saying, okay, so you want to help the Imkalee workers, or you want to achieve a $15 minimum wage in the United States. that's a very admirable desire, but how do you make that happen? You make it happen by mapping out a plan. Starting small, maybe starting with letters, starting actually even smaller. Start by learning about the activism and the issues that you want to advocate, and then think about who you need to impact, how you need to bring an impact on, and at appropriate moments, looking back and seeing, like, have we made the impact we wish, and was it a success, or do we need to do something different? It's constantly assessing and moving the envelope forward.
Good.
So we're teaching activism in the schools, and the kids are amazing. I mean, they're leaders. These are kids 8, 9, 10. I can tell you, last year they stood next to me and they addressed crowds of hundreds of people at the Fight for 15 actions. They are true activist leaders now, and I can only look forward to what they're going to be in their next iteration into adulthood.
Our guest on Community Connections tonight is Ann Toback. She's the executive director of Workmen's Circle. Their website is circle.org. Their phone number 212-889-6800, 212-889-6800. And there are a number of schools that they have, several right here in the metropolitan area. Now, when you say schools, how many kids are involved in each one of these schools?
It varies. In our Midtown Manhattan school, there's around 40 kids. So it's they tend to be small community endeavors.
Right.
We have a school in East Meadow, Long Island, that is closer to 100. So it's everything in between. Sometimes they have 25 or 30. It kind of depends. And one of our hallmarks is we're experimenting. So we are interested in how smaller groups engage and learn together, and how we grow them into larger groups, and make sure even in the larger groups that the core identity and the core values that we're putting forward are still fresh and experienced by all of the kids in the community. So they certainly range in numbers, but they're all over. All over, as you said, in New York and New Jersey, and we're expanding beyond. We have schools here in Midtown, in East Meadow, Long Island, in Smithtown, Long Island, Somerset, New Jersey, in Westchester County, in Dobbs Ferry, and we have a very long-standing school in Boston, Massachusetts, and a very new school in Chicago, Illinois. So we're hearing from people, on a very regular basis, saying we want our kids to engage Jewishly. We want them to learn about their identity and the roots and the connections, and we want them to express that Jewish identity through activism, and to do it through experiences and programs and really meaningful connections. So they come to us, and we organize schools, or we connect them with the schools we have, and it's been a very positive and inspiring experience.
But aren't there adults involved in the Workmen's Circle too?
Oh, very much so.
Talk about that a little bit. What you do.
I mean, what we do is really about a 360-degree approach to progressive Jewish identity. And what I feel makes us so special is we don't just do one thing. We do a number of things because Jewish identity is so diverse. So people come to us for the social justice activism, and they come as a community of activists. And then people come to us also to engage in programs around their Jewish identity, including we teach the Yiddish language to over 200 students each semester. We engage people around Yiddish culture and Jewish culture. So there's a plethora of programs.
So you're not teaching Hebrew, you're teaching Yiddish.
No, we're teaching Yiddish. It's all about that cultural piece and connecting to that history. I mean, when we for 1,000 years, Yiddish was the language of the Jewish people in Eastern Europe. It was a language spoken by millions and written and engaged in. Some of our greatest literature was written in Yiddish, and political pieces, all sort of comedy, tragedy. It was all done in Yiddish. And today, we're reconnecting hundreds of people to this past, to these roots, through their engagement in language classes.
Because most people have lost that, right?
Most people have lost it, and yet it remains in small pieces. When you meet a New Yorker, and I think you could probably expand it to most people in the United States, there's a sprinkling of Yiddish
That's true.
in
It's
their
true.
language,
Yeah.
and they tend to love it. Jewish and
It's
not
fun.
Jewish. It's a cultural identity.
Right.
It's a way of expressing who you are that's quite unique and special and beloved. And so part of what we're doing is reconnecting people with their heritage and their roots, because you're not really a whole person if you don't understand where you came from and your history. So learning Yiddish is part of that. Some come to learn the language, and we offer classes that take you from the very beginner to very advanced. And we teach it both online and in person.
And this isn't just for kids, it's for adults as well,
No,
right?
it's mostly for adults.
That's what I thought, yeah.
We do have some kids in their teens who take these classes, and of course, kids in our schools learn a little bit of the language as part of the whole curriculum.
Right.
But those schools tend to meet 3 hours, maybe 4 hours a week, so there's only so much we can convey in the schools. But online and in person, it's mostly adults between 30 and above, and we do get some teens. They learn up through conversational
That's great.
Yiddish, and they even do things like they'll read great books as part of the learning.
So if people are interested, they're listening, they want to get into this, they would go to circle.org, and where would they look then?
They on our homepage, there's information about the Yiddish programs.
Okay.
And you can also just call us and ask. What really tickles me is that now we're teaching it online across the world. We have people taking it in real time from all over the world. And we also have people from all over the world teaching. So there's a master Yiddishist in France who's teaching on one of our courses. And
Are the courses free online?
They're not free. There's a charge because they're real courses.
Sure.
That it's the same. It's real time. It's a limited number of people. So there is still a charge for the online programs. Although, if you just want a sprinkle of Yiddish, if you want to learn a little bit, you can go on our website, and I'm sure you may pick up some of the language, a bissel, as they say. But it's a pretty amazing experience, and it's amazing for me to see a class online with people from as far as Australia, and then we have a number of students from Russia and the Ukraine. So the people from the countries where this language was originally spoken are now learning the language from us in real time.
That's
online.
Great, online.
So it's a pretty amazing experience. It's an amazing community that's created.
Our guest tonight on Community Connections is Ann Toback. She's the executive director of the Workmen's Circle. And, in fact, she's the first woman to be the executive director. And this is an organization that's more than 100 years old. So you sort of cracked the barrier.
I did.
In a way, right?
I did.
Was that difficult? Was there some sexism involved in the organization that you had to sort of break through?
I didn't experience it that way.
Good.
It is an older organization, and in fairness, they didn't have an enormous number of executive directors. People tended to stay a pretty long time. I think the organization has been in change. I was part of a change process, and I can only say that the leadership who chose me to be the executive director I know we're thrilled to have a woman, an activist, a progressive activist coming on board. So, I mean, it's exciting to be someone who broke, who could
break
say
the
I
barrier.
was the first woman who broke a barrier. But in my case, I know that the people who invited me on couldn't have been happier.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this event you have coming up on December 1st. You have a benefit coming up. Tell us about that.
So it's really part of who we are and what we do. Every year we try to honor people who are amazing examples of our commitment to progressive connection to making the world a better place for everyone. And this year we have a mother and son who really epitomize what it means to be going from generation to generation in activism and making the world a better place. So Ethel Rome and Joe Rome are our honorees this year. And Ethel is a woman who has, there's almost nothing she hasn't done. She has spent a lifetime committed to forwarding gender equality.
Mm-hmm.
She started as she ran factories and companies since World War II. She broke pretty much every barrier. So when you talk about breaking barriers, Ethel truly did break barriers and created an amazing experience for so many people. And then her son, Joe, is a world-renowned author. He's a physicist, and most important to us today, he's a climate expert. And he's the chief science advisor on the series Years of Living Dangerously, which is on Showtime. And he's really the climate guy. He is the expert who's telling the world what needs to happen.
And that's one of the
world.
issues I would expect. We're talking about progressive Jewish identity. Climate certainly has to be one of the pieces of that identity, right?
Oh, it's a huge part. We don't have a world unless we figure out how we can stop and fix the climate change issues that are surrounding us and impacting us every day. And that's so simplistic a response, but we simply have to do things to change to change this crisis we're living in. And Joe is truly one of the heroes of the environment. In fact, Time magazine called him a hero of the environment, and others, many, many others. So he's this amazing man who's truly a modern-day hero committed to, and here's something we say in Yiddish, a shenera and bessere Welt for alle, a better and more beautiful world for all. And his mother, Ethel, has spent a lifetime forwarding the progressive agenda and instilling that in him. And she also was raised in a Yiddish household and, talks about reading the Yiddish forward. So it's a very much people who are very much a part of the whole Workmens Circle identity and connection to the world.
All right.
We're so excited to be honoring them on December 1st, and really we hope people will sort of will take from them this amazing example of passing one's values from generation to generation.
Tradition?
Tradition it is.
Yes.
Maybe a progressive tradition is how we would say it.
So if you're interested in getting in touch with Ann Toback, you want to call the organization 212-889-6800 or go to circle.org to find Workmen's Circle. Thank you for being with us, Ann.
Oh, thank you so much.
Till the next time, this is Bill Ayers, and I wish you much peace and love and hope. That's something we all need a lot of.